right, good morning and welcome back to another Somayoga practice. Today we're going to be focusing on shoulders, forearms, wrists, hands, and we always tie in the whole body. Props for today, we'll need some blankets, one or two for sure, spinal strip if you have it, and if you don't have a spinal strip you could always use your extra blanket, blocks and or a cushion for your head. We'll need the small massage ball. If you have the larger soft squishy ball that I've used in class before, there's a couple of different styles of them. I've got an even bigger, squishier one, but some of you I know have the small or the larger ball as well, so that can work. And if you don't have the ball, we can always just use a rolled up blanket. Chair is always an option, have a wall space available, and I think that's it. So, all right, let's come down onto our back. We're going to do our check-in here. So feel free to have the knees bent, supporting your body in whatever way you need to when you get down onto your mat. And we'll take our time for our Soma scan this morning. So just checking in once you get yourself settled. And allowing your body to be supported by the floor. Maybe closing the eyes, turning your focus inward. And then beginning to just connect in with sensation of the points of your body that are connected to the floor. So perhaps starting at the back of the head, noticing where your head comes into contact with the floor. If you have any tendency for your head to be turned left or right, noticing the curve in the neck and where you start to feel contact of the upper spine or the thoracic spine into the floor. Are you aware of your shoulders into the floor? And if you do feel your shoulder blades in contact with the floor, what parts of your shoulder blades come into contact? And are there differences between the right shoulder and the left shoulder? Notice where you start to feel contact points in the arms. And noticing your arm position you've chosen, whether you have your palms rolled to the sky or your palms face down. Notice again if there's a difference between the right and the left arm, their contact points, or their depth into the floor. Noticing also in the rib cage if you feel the ribs in contact with the floor. And if there's a difference between the right side of your rib cage and the left side of your rib cage. Coming down further, sensing the curve of your spine and the lumbar spine and the low back. And noticing the points of contact of the pelvis. So from left to right, and also from the top of the pelvis to the tailbone. If the legs are lengthened out onto the floor, is there an awareness of the back of the thighs in contact with the floor? And if they're not in an extended position, just paying attention to the soles of the feet and how they come into contact. If the legs are extended, you might feel the back of your calves. There might be the sense of rotation in the legs felt as well. Toes and knees might be pointing in different directions on each side, or they might be the same. And even the depth of the legs again. And that can be felt in the heels, the back of the calves, and maybe even the back of the thighs. And then from here, once we've got that little impression of where we're starting our practice, go ahead and bend your knees, bringing the feet to the floor if they're not already there, in what we call our effortless rest position. And then shifting your awareness to your breathing here. So just beginning to notice the breath movement in the torso. Where do you feel breath? What's the quality of your breathing? Is it shallow? Is it deep? What would be your natural tendency? Would it be to hold the breath in, or perhaps hold the breath out? Or to have a continuous, smooth cycle of breath in and breath out? And taking about 5 more breaths, just noticing here. And over those 5 breaths of just noticing, chances are you've lengthened or deepened your breath slightly. And then from here we'll start into our movement assessment. So starting to roll towards a flatten first. So letting the pubic bone roll towards the navel, the ribs perhaps pulling towards the pubic bone. Letting your head stay on the floor at this point, so the ribs are curling away slightly from the floor, and then slowly releasing that flatten. So take your flatten, letting it release completely, and then starting to move towards your arch where the tailbone presses towards the mat. You might gently feel the pressure of the head pressing into the floor, and then slowly letting that release. And go ahead and roll through your arch and flatten maybe 3 or 4 times, just assessing how your body's moving. How's your spine moving this morning? So when we think about working with the shoulders, arms, and hands, we always want to bring everything back to the spine. So how the spine might have some limitations can have an impact on the movement patterns into the shoulders and into the arms, all the way down to the hands. So slowly assessing, and as we're moving through the arch and curl our arch and flatten, we might start to unwind a little bit of tension in the spine. And then starting to move into our flower. So taking your feet a little wider than hip distance apart if that feels comfortable for you. And then starting with your palms facing up towards the sky. Roll towards your flatten, squeeze your knees together, pull your shoulders away from the floor, and roll your arms so your palms turn face down. So that's that closed petals position. And then slowly releasing, coming back to neutral. And then rolling in the opposite direction, so the palms roll a little further into that open position as we pull the shoulders towards the floor, and we arch the back, knees open up, and then releasing. And go ahead, flowing through your closed petals of the flower to the open petals of the flower. Starting to incorporate movement of the spine, the shoulders, and the arms, and the legs. And then once you're complete with the last one, let yourself settle back into neutral here. And just take a moment and recheck in with your SomaScan just after doing those 2 movements. Noticing if there's any difference in the placement or the contact points of your spine in contact with the mat and or the shoulder girdle or the arms. And then from here, we're going to take this over onto our side. So we don't need particularly the blankets under the ribs. What we're going to do today is use the smaller ball, or not the smaller ball, sorry, the larger ball. I've got two of them, two larger ones. So I'll just show you. And if you don't have a ball, you can just use a blanket. So you can take a blanket and roll it up so that you have a roll under the side of the ribs. And if you're using the ball, you're going to use the ball. So what it's going to look like is just laying over the ball. You could put your hand under your head if that feels comfortable, or you could use a block to support your head or a cushion. When you're on the ball, when you're on the ball. So we're just gonna try to place that ball under the ribs, and if that, again, if you're just using a roll, that's fine. You're still gonna be doing the same idea. You're gonna be rolling back and forth towards the chest, rolling towards the floor and away from the floor, either on the blanket or on the ball. And if you happen to have one of these larger squishy balls, then you can use that as well. It covers a little more space, but either one is quite nice. And what we're doing is we're doing a little bit of fascial work here on the side that you're lying on, and giving some compression into the rib cage, and that hopefully will help us open up the side of the ribs a little bit. So depending on how this feels, we've all done the easy twist too. You could incorporate that top arm into this a little bit. It's a little bit trickier if you're on a ball, but you're getting that same sense of rolling back and forth. And then take that ball out from under your ribs, and then we'll just switch sides here. I'm going to the other side, or maybe you've just rolled over, and again you're placing the ball under the side of the ribs. You could have your hand holding up your head on that side. You might have your head supported, and then just take a breath or two there once you come into that position. And it's interesting to notice the differences from side to side. So I know for me, my left side tends to always be a little bit more shortened, and so there's just a little less give to the tissue on that side as I lay on that ball. And then starting to just kind of roll back and forth. Again, it's another fascial release technique. Exploring the tissue. The blanket roll also gives you a similar, it's the pressure and the rotation piece here of the movement of the fascia. And then once you've maybe explored a few rolls there, if you want to try to bring in that arm, the top arm, you could do that as well into that nice easy twist, connecting to the fascia and that fascial line down through the waist on the top side of the body. And then from here, either using the roll or the ball, you can turn so that you're placing the ball under the upper back. So this is going to bring you into some spinal extension, so be cautious. And you could take your hands behind your head to allow yourself to lengthen down, so letting your head come back. So this is like the, we've done arch and curl over a roll before in this series, I believe in this series. But we take the curl, so we come up into that bit of a flatten. You could bring your elbows towards each other, coming into that curl. So we're contracting in the front of the body. And then you're slowly letting the fascia and the muscles on the front of the body lengthen as you're starting to move into a little bit of spinal extension maybe opening the elbows up, coming into that extended position. So you're going to open up your diaphragm, you're opening up the intercostals and the ribs, and then rolling up again. And then releasing back down. So going slowly, and just go to the point that your body will allow, where you're allowing it to just let go. There's not any strain, there's not pain. You feel that sort of soft giving of the tissues. And maybe take it 1 or 2 more times. And then the next time you come up to the top, support your head in the weight of the head in your hands, and then think about twisting to the, not twisting, side bending to the side. So you're going to bring your ribs and your pelvis and the elbow on one side. So I'm going to the left on this side. So I'm shortening up that left side. So kind of think about side curl, and then slowly let that release. And then try it on the opposite side. So we're getting into the sideline fascia as well as the back and the front of the body here. The back line we're getting into with the placement of the ball. And then we're getting the fascia on the side of the body with the movement. Well, I guess we're getting all lines with the movement. And then the opening of that front line a little bit, because we're slightly extended in the upper back. And take that through maybe 1 or 2 more times from side to side, just playing with that movement. Seeing if you can let the weight of your head rest into your hands so you're not straining through your neck. And then coming back to center. Taking your hands to the floor, rolling yourself up into a seated position, and then we'll take that ball out. And then just take a moment to just check in again on your back. And once again, just noticing those contact points of the shoulders, where the head and the neck, maybe the curve in the neck and the head position might seem slightly different. I know there's quite a difference. My shoulders are much more in contact with the floor. I can feel my rib cage more on the floor, my thoracic spine. And even the weight into my arms has shifted slightly. I feel both of my arms, I had a little difference between right to left, and they feel fairly equal, still a little more weight into my left side. So then from there, we're going to take this up and isolate the shoulders a little bit more. So we're going to come up onto our feet, and we're going to roll out the shoulders on the wall. So you'll need a block for the chest, and then we'll roll out the back of the shoulders and our rotator cuff as well. So once we come up, take your ball, we'll bring it behind your right shoulder. Take my sweater off for that. So we want to be between the shoulder blade and the spine, right in that space. I'm starting on my right side, bringing the ball to the wall, and thinking about connecting down to our legs here as we come into a squat, as we roll the ball up and down between the shoulder blade and the spine, taking it probably about 3 or 4 passes through that section of our shoulder girdle. And then we can slide the ball up a little bit higher. So you take the ball up towards the top of the same shoulder. And again, you can kind of squat down. You could take your feet a little further away from the wall to get at the top of that shoulder as well. And you can kind of play around. The biggest thing is we want not to be on the spine, so that we're not putting pressure right on the spinous processes of the, or those the nubbies that you feel out in the back. And then passing again, maybe 3 or 4 times. So with us being, some of us might be on devices a little bit more, with us being in lockdown again, or you know, having your laptop on a kitchen table instead of being at a actual desk. So some of these shoulder muscles can be pretty nasty. And then once we've rolled that part, we're going to take it to the back of the shoulder blade like we normally do with this section behind the armpit. We want to get in at that little infraspinatus, and we'll get a little bit at our lat here as well as we roll that ball back and forth. And again, it's not that big of a space, it's only about maybe 4 or 5 inches. And then we take the arm over your head if that's comfortable, otherwise you take it across to your opposite shoulder. Palpate the back of the armpit, so feel for the bony edge of the armpit. That's where the ball goes, and then we roll up and down. And then this can be another tricky spot to get to if we go into our tricep a little bit. So our tricep is the muscle on the back of the arm, from the armpit all the way down to the elbow. So if you turn so that the back of your arm is resting against the wall, and you could use a block for this too. You could put the block, it gives your body a little more space, but start sort of low towards the armpit. So if I turn to my side, it might work to show you how I'm rolling that back of the arm. So I'm going to roll by bending my knees, going up and down my tricep. And again, it might be easier without the block, but the actually with the block, it kind of gives you a little more space to get your body away from the wall. And you can roll up and down along that tricep. Ooh, there's some tight little spots in there. And then from there, once you've rolled your tricep, then we're going to go on to the pec. So the pec is the muscle on the front of the chest, so you can use your block, the ball against the chest below the collarbone, and you're rolling back and forth between the shoulder and the breastbone on that block. And then you just take it back and forth. So remember that you can always position the ball in a few different spots here. So you can go higher or lower. You can hang out in one spot if you like. You can hang out there and move the arm a little bit to feel that you're applying a little bit of a stretch there. And taking that several passes through the front of the chest. So another place that might be really tight with spending a little bit more time maybe on devices or on computers. All right, and then we'll continue on with that same side, doing the bicep on the front of the shoulder here. So again, you might still use your block and you bring your ball onto the front of that shoulder and then rolling, whoops, I'm going to lose the block. And then rolling down towards the elbow. And you can go back and forth. So these are trickier to do, but you can get in at some of the tissues that connect the arm bone and the forearm to the shoulder. Rolling it back and forth. Good. All right. And then once that side is done, we're going to take this into our pec stretch on this side. So we're going to stand facing the wall. And then we take our, whichever side you did, I did my right side. So I'm going to take my right arm up no higher than shoulder height, but I want to see what's happening in this space between at my hip here and coming up towards shoulder height. So I start to feel some tension in my arm when I get to about here. So I'm going to stop here and then pause for about 3 or 4 breaths with my hand on the wall, not pushing against the wall, it's just softly against the wall. And then I'm going to turn my feet towards the opposite side. So I'm turning my feet to the left, keeping my arm where it is. Keeping my shoulder back so that it's opening up a little bit in the chest. And once I've turned to the point where I feel a comfortable stretch, I'll hang out there again for several breaths. And you could even explore here, turning your head towards the left shoulder and maybe even turning your head towards the right shoulder. So the idea is not to get zinging down your arm, but you might notice when you turn your head that there's a more intense stretch through the front of the shoulder and the front of the neck. And then once you're complete with that stretch, you're going to take the feet, turn them back towards the wall, and then let your arm come down away from the wall. And then from there, we're going to do the wall clock today as well. So the wall clock, you stand with your hand out at the side of the wall. If it's available to bring the arm up towards coming up over the head, then you can go ahead and take the arm up higher. But ideally, you want the palm to be on the wall, and then you can inch it up. So again, when you start to feel some stretch sensation or some kind of stretch sensation in the arm, that's where you're going to stop. So the arm is up at about 12 o'clock here, or it could be low, it could be by the waist. Everybody's tension in the arm is different. And again, we just take a few breaths in each position. So from 12 o'clock, we're going to take that hand and walk it back towards maybe 1 o'clock. And as you take the arm back, again, you might notice there's going to be some different sensation towards the front of the shoulder. And maybe even, I feel that even into the upper arm all the way down to my elbow. And there's a little sensation in my hand even. So again, from here, you could explore what happens when you turn your head. You could take your ear towards your shoulder. There's all kinds of connections between the neck, the shoulder, and the arm. And then from there, if it feels available to take the hand back to about 2 o'clock, you could take it back a little further. So the further I go back, the more I feel that into my forearm rather than my shoulder and my chest, which is fine. It's just showing me where there's some tension in the fascial tissue down the arm. And then once you're complete with that, then we come back up to 12 and then bring your arm down to your side. So just taking a moment to pause in Tadasana here, just getting a sense of what this whole right shoulder and arm feel like in comparison to the left side. I feel like I'm like way down here. My right arm feels much longer than my left. All right, so then let's take this all over to the left side. So we first are going to roll out the shoulder. So we take the ball to the space between the shoulder blade and the spine. And again, it's an opportunity to check in with those legs coming into some squats. Sort of sense and feel, are you balancing equally and putting pressure through the feet equally left to right? Or do you have a tendency to hang out on one side a little bit more than the other? Try to balance it out, connecting in with what you're feeling in that left shoulder girdle here. And then once we've rolled that lower portion of the shoulder blade, you can take the ball up a little bit higher, and we connect into that resident knot up at the top of the shoulder that a lot of us have, and that never seems to 100% go away. What's more important is that sometimes it doesn't speak. And you can roll the top of that shoulder towards the neck. Again, we just want to be careful on the spinous processes that we're staying away from them. And then once we've completed in there, then we're going to go on to the rotator cuff. So we take the ball and you take it around to behind your armpit onto the shoulder blade, and your shoulder is facing the wall, and we'll just roll back and forth there. And that side to side movement again, just seeing what you find in there. There's some little guitar strings in there for me. And then once you've done that space, then we take the arm, if it's available to take it over the head, you take it overhead, otherwise you just leave it on your right shoulder. And then we come in and you feel for that very back edge of the armpit, and we're rolling up and down here. And I guess I never demoed on the other side, if you can't get that arm over your head, how to roll your tricep. So I'll do that one on this side. Roll that space a few times. All right. So again, you could use your block here to get in at the tricep. Place the block against the wall, and the tricep comes up. So you're rolling from your block up. You're rolling from your armpit towards your elbow. So you can also get your tricep this way too. If you can't take the arm overhead, you can still bring the ball. It might not even need the block for that one. You can just roll from side to side. It might be easier than the block way, actually, which it's a little harder to get on the inside because the tricep wraps around the whole back and sides of the arm. All right, from our tricep, we're going to go onto the pec. So again, we can use the ball and the block against the wall. You're rolling underneath your collarbone, between the breastbone and the shoulder here. And you go back and forth, from side to side. Exploring the tissue there. Applying a little bit of a stretch to the tissue, and we're getting circulation in there. And then from there, we can come to working the bicep as well. So you can keep your block on the wall if you like, taking the front of if you have your elbow pit facing the wall, then you're going to be rolling your bicep here. I can't remember if I did it with the block on the other side. No, I think I did. And then we roll it back and forth. So hopefully it's not too much of a struggle for you to get into some of these tissues on the arm. And then once we've completed that, we're going to come down, or sorry, we have to do our stretch on this side. So we're going to do our pec stretch first on this side. So we're going to bring that left arm facing the wall. You bring your left arm. So again, explore that space between the arm at your side to coming up to shoulder height, and just noticing where you start to feel the first little bit of maybe a bit of a stretch sensation in that arm, and then we hang out and take a few breaths there. And then we turn our feet in the opposite direction. So I did my left side this time, so I'm turning my feet to the right and opening up the front of that chest, making sure I'm not kind of pulling forward. I want to think about that shoulder blade pulling back a little bit to allow that shoulder to open. And again, you could stay here hanging out, playing with a little bit of the neck rotation as well. And again, the goal is not the zing down the arm. The goal is a gentle stretch sensation. And then once we've completed several breaths here, we turn back to the wall. Let your arm come down, and then we bring that arm facing that side facing the wall, and then we bring our hand up. And so depending on where you can have your hand on the wall, so you want the palm on the wall, and ideally the elbow straight here, and bringing the hand up as high up at the wall as is comfortable, and then again, you start to feel a stretch sensation in that arm. And then we hang out at that 12 o'clock position for several breaths. So you're not leaning into the wall with that hand. That hand's just softly placed on the wall. You've got your weight equally balanced in both feet. And then once you've taken a few breaths here, then you could take the hand back to that 1 o'clock position, or sorry, I guess this would be 11 o'clock. And then again, you can hang out there for several breaths. You could play with the neck and head turns too here, noticing what that does. And then if it's available, maybe taking the hand back a little further towards maybe that 10 o'clock position. And again, a few breaths. And then once you're complete, bring the hand back up to 12. Let the hand come down and take a moment again, just checking in Tadasana. And hopefully we have arms that feel light, and they're just hanging out here. There's hopefully less tension through our shoulder girdle. And from there, we're going to come down onto our spinal strip. Okay. Yes, we're going to come onto our spinal strip. I'm just going to put my jacket back on. I'm getting a little chilled in here. As you come onto your spinal strip, if you don't have the strip, you use a Z-fold blanket. So your Z-fold blanket is a blanket that's going to be folded in 3, and it'll be under your head and your tailbone at the same time. Okay. And once we come onto our back on that strip, and just take that first moment that you get down onto the strip to just settle in here. So far we've done a lot of release work, so now we're going to look at some of the movements, a little bit more of the movement. So we're going to start with those shoulder blades. So start to bring the shoulder blades up towards the ears, and then slowly let them release, and then bring them down towards the pelvis. So your arms will just kind of slide along the floor, taking them up, and then release. Once they've released, then start to go down towards the pelvis, release, and then towards the ears again. So think about it as if you're ironing the floor with your shoulder blades. So they're not probably in contact with the floor, but that sort of movement of ironing. And then from there, going to the retraction. So squeeze your shoulder blades towards the spinal strip and then letting that slowly release. Once the contraction is released, then think about bringing the shoulder blades away from the floor. So a little different than the flower movement. This is more thinking about those blades coming around the sides of the ribs. So even feeling as if the bottom tip of the shoulder blade is coming up around the side of the rib cage. And then letting it slowly release. Going back to the retraction, squeezing the blades into the spinal strip. Slowly letting it go. And then again, up towards the sky. And when you go into your retraction, think about sensing and feeling the whole inside edge of that shoulder blade in contact with the spinal strip. So it's not just the top edge, the whole bottom edge is against it as well. And then complete with one last protraction where you're taking the blades, bringing them around. And then from there, we're going to bring our, let's go with the left hand first this time. Bring your left hand onto the forehead. So the back of the hand is on the forehead and your right hand rests into the left palm. So both palms are facing towards the sky, elbows are out to the side. So we kind of did a little bit of this with our arch and curl. So take your shoulder blades towards the floor. Feel how that connects into the retraction of the shoulder blades. And then slowly let that go. And then as your elbows come towards the sky, hopefully you're going to feel that brings you into a little bit of protraction in the armpit area. And then take that through a couple of times, isolating the movements of the shoulder blade in relationship to the arms and the ribs. And then from there, we'll go into our pec deck movement. So we take our arms over the chest, elbows are bent, so your hands are sort of in front of your face here, but over your shoulders, so there's a little space between the arms. And then as you let your arms move out to the sides, keeping your forearms parallel as they go apart from each other, but they're not, the hands aren't going closer to the floor. So this is kind of like when we do the leg lift, that we want to think about that movement's coming from the socket here as the arms come up and down, so that there's not the elbows wider or the hands wider. So there's that sense of parallel between the arms and bringing them back up and down. So the weight of the arm can add a little bit of load onto the shoulder stabilizing muscles, because they have to hold the arm bone steady or the blade steady to support that movement of the arm. And then once you bring them open again, so that the elbows are hovering off the floor, so we're not letting them go all the way down to the floor, then we move in the direction of going up. So you're taking your arms along the floor, or parallel to the floor now, as you go up and down, and take that through maybe 2 or 3 times. And hopefully I just felt my elbow touch the floor, so it kind of went off that parallel line. And again, so this is going to add some load onto the shoulder. And those stabilizers are supporting the weight of the arm. Then when you come back to your neutral, bring your arms back up into that pec deck position, and then let them take a break here for a moment, just let them rest. And then we're going to take them, clasping your hands in front of you, so take your hands and interlace your fingers, and then we're going to turn the palms towards the sky. So it's going to bring us into a little bit of internal rotation in our shoulders. And then pressing the palms up towards the sky, keeping the fingers interlaced. So your thumb should be facing towards your feet. And then we're going to start to take the arms in the direction of going over your head. So gently playing with this movement. You might get all the way over, you might not. Whatever we are doing, we want not to go past your ears, and we want not to be going through any movement of strain here. So taking them up and back over your chest. So we're doing those pullovers. And then when you come back up to the top, we're going to flip the hands over. So your palms will be facing your chest, and your wrists are in a little bit more flexion here. Your thumbs will be pointing up towards the top of your mat or the top of your head. And then try to not have the elbow pits facing up. The elbow pits are generally facing each other here. And then we're going to start to take the arms again in the direction of going over your head. So there's some slightly different angles here in the shoulders, as well as the wrists and hands. And take that maybe 3 or 4 times. And then once you're complete with that, bring the hands down, letting them rest at your sides again. And then we'll roll off of the spinal strip and come onto your back for just a moment. We'll do just a quick check-in on your back again. And just settling in on the back again, take a moment to experience that Soma scan one more time. So whether the legs are extended or not is up to you and your comfort level. So taking awareness to the head, the position of the head, the curve of the neck, where you feel contact of the thoracic spine, where the rib cage comes into connection, and noticing the contact points of the shoulder blades, the arms, and maybe even the weight of the pelvis has changed into the floor, the curve of the low back. And there might be, we haven't spent much time on the lower body at all, so there might be some subtle changes, there might not be. And then from here, we're going to take this over to a seated position. So whatever seated position works for you today. So if you're sitting in a chair, that works as well, or if you're sitting on the floor. Have a block available. We're going to take this down to some work with our forearm. So there's a couple of different ways to work with the forearm with the pinky ball or the pinky massage ball. You could use a block on your lap, and you can place the ball on the block, and with the palm facing down, you could roll the forearm muscles. These are our flexor muscles. Roll that out. So you would be moving from wrist to elbow. So that's one way. And if you find that that's kind of awkward or too much pressure, there's another way that you can use the pinky ball to work on the forearm tissue. And that's to take the ball against your skin, and then you bring it into, you press it into the skin. So you want to be, when we're working the flexors of the forearm, you're working towards the inside of the elbow, and you can press the ball into the skin and then twist your ball. So it's going to pick up the skin a little bit, and it's going to give a little twist. So you could have your arms supported here as well with that block, and you just work your way down the forearm, giving your muscles a little twist. So all the muscles on the this side of the forearm, curl your hands into a fist, and they flex the wrist down. So if they're tight, you might be working in here, pressing on them, and all of a sudden your fingers curl a little bit, or your wrist might curl. So you're just going to give the muscles a little twist, or you might be rolling them on your lap, whichever is easiest. I kind of like this one better than the rolling. And then for the back of the hand, you can do the back of the forearm, you can do the same thing. You go from wrist to, it's a little awkward though, wrist to elbow here on the back of the arm. And again, I prefer the technique with the ball. So if you let your forearm rest on the block, and then this time when we're thinking about the position of the muscles, it's this tendon on the outer side of the elbow that these are our extensor muscles of the hand. So if you've ever experienced golfer's elbow or tennis elbow, these are the 2 points that are impacted by, I think golfers is on the inside and tennis is on the outside. Yeah. So these forearm muscles can get really tight, and that pulls on the tendon, which creates that tendonitis. And we work our way down that muscle. So you press the ball into the tissue and give it a little twist, and working your way all the way down. And take that back and forth a couple of times, maybe 2 or 3 times. There's more tension in this one than I was expecting. All right, and then once we've done that arm, we'll go to the opposite side. So you might, if you're wearing a watch, you might take that off. And again, you can roll on the block if that works for you, to roll out that forearm, or you can take the ball and again, so on the flexor side or the palm side of the arm, you're going to be pressing in on more towards the inside edge of that elbow, and press and twist as you work your way down. And then once we've done the flexor muscles on the forearm, then we're going to do the extensor muscles. So you turn your hand over so the palm is facing down, and again, or if you're rolling, your palm would be facing up if you're rolling the ball back and forth. Otherwise, you can hold that ball and give it a twist. So if you're using a tennis ball, this technique probably isn't the easiest, or it might not work, but you could even just roll the ball up and down your arm. And you're taking that twist. I've always, for so many years, it's always been my flexors that have been tighter, and but now that I'm not doing as much massage, I'm doing more keyboard work, so I'm feeling those extensor muscles a little bit more. All right, so that is our forearm self-massage technique, and then from here, we're going to just go into working with our fingers and our hands a little bit and getting into those stretches for the forearms. So generally when we stretch our forearms, we want the elbow to be straight because the tendon crosses that joint. If we have the elbow bent, it's not much of a, well, there might be a little bit of a stretch there, but if you straighten the elbow, there's going to be more stretch when we bring the hand into a flex position. So your palm is facing forward, you take the opposite hand and you're going to pull back on the lower portion of the fingers and the top of the hand there, opening up that. Now think about, so watch that you're not holding that right shoulder all the way up to your ear. Let your shoulder be relaxed, since we took all that time to unwind some tension in the shoulders. So we're stretching that wrist out. And then turn the wrist over so that the palm faces the floor, and then you flex the hand down And again, so your elbow is straight so that the stretch goes through the whole forearm. We turn it down. And then you could even curl your fingers in here. It's going to give you a little more stretch. And then releasing and maybe circling the wrist, so those little wrist bones might not like those movements so much. And then we'll go to the other side, so the palms facing the sky, and then you flex your wrist back and we open up the front of the hand by pulling back with the opposite hand, giving a stretch. Relax that left shoulder, make sure it's not up towards your ear if that's the side that you're on. And generally you hold your stretch for about 30 seconds. And then we're gonna let that go. And I didn't somaticize that, I just thought of that now, because you could somaticize that stretch by applying, when you're in the stretch, applying a little bit of pushing the fingers towards the, curling them in, pushing the palm into your hand, and then pulling back. That's gonna go into your conscious contraction of the muscle and a conscious release. So this was just a static stretch. We're just holding and hanging out there, applying a little bit of stretch sensation onto the tissue, but you could try to press your hand into the hand that's supporting it and then releasing it. Okay, and then from there, again, circle that wrist, and then we're going to go into the hands. So we're going to take the hands, bringing the fingertips together, and then we'll press these are those little spider push-ups on a mirror, they call them. So you're going to stretch your fingers wide as you bring the palms towards each other, and then bring your elbows up. So your fingers, your palms come right together, and then slowly releasing, and then press the fingers away. You could bring your elbows all the way together, connection into those shoulders, and pressing them up, bringing the palms down as you bring the wrists together. And taking them up. And then you can bring the elbows back together. And take it maybe 1 or 2 more times. And then interlace your fingers again, and take the palms facing them forward out in front of you, and bringing your arms in the direction of going over your head. And again, that'll be a nice stretch in those forearms in that direction, and then flip them over so that your palms are facing the chest, and then we take the arms up again. Okay, and then the last movement that we really, with our shoulders, that we haven't addressed yet is that internal and external rotation of the arms. So I didn't have you grab a strap or a stretch band this morning, but if you have one around, it might be a nice addition to this Gomukhasana arm stretch. So we'll take the arms out to your sides slightly, have your palms facing forward. So we kind of played with this a little bit with the flower. So we want to think about rotating the arm in that shoulder socket, rotating internally and externally, feeling hopefully those arm bones are moving really smoothly in your shoulder sockets this morning with all the work that we've done to unwind the shoulders. And then you're going to take the palms into neutral, take your right arm up towards the sky, and this is where you need your strap. So just hang the strap over your right shoulder, bring that right arm up, bending your elbow, bringing the hand onto that stretch band or strap. Take your left arm, rotate your palm so it faces the wall behind you or the back of your mat. Take your arm back, and then bend your elbow, bringing your hand towards the strap or the stretch band. And then if you want to, you can kind of inch your fingers closer together We want to make sure that we're not collapsing that left shoulder forward, so it's the shoulder blades stayed pretty steady there. And then just taking a little pause there. So this is getting into our tricep on the right arm, and our right arm is externally rotated. Our left arm is internally rotated, and we don't really get a bicep stretch here, but you might get a little tricep here as well. Taking a few breaths. Feel the breath in the rib cage. And then releasing the arms, and take that strap and place it over your left shoulder. And again, you can start with your arms down at your sides. Take that left arm up, bending the elbow, the palm is going to come towards that strap. And then your right arm, you rotate so your palm turns back. Take that arm back, keeping the front of the shoulder open as you bend the elbow. And again, you might clasp onto that strip or the strap behind your back. And again, just take a few breaths here, thinking about bringing that elbow towards the sky. Spine should be staying in neutral, so we haven't popped the ribs, we haven't arched the back. And then when you're complete here again, let the arms come down to your sides. So just quickly going on to hands and knees here to load through the shoulder girdle a little bit after unwinding some of that tension, hopefully, and working with the mechanics of the arms. And if you're not comfortable on hands and knees, you can do this on the seat of a chair as well. So we're just going to be taking the hands onto the floor, bringing the hands into, well, they're in extension here, underneath the shoulders, and then just lean forward slightly. So that's going to bring a little more weight into the hands, into the wrists, and then bring them back. So taking it back and forth 2 or 3 times here. And then go from side to side. So as we go to the side, you're going to notice around the shoulders, around the armpit area, hopefully you're going to notice around the armpits into the side of the chest, a little more connection. So that's where we're loading and stabilizing. And then maybe play with taking one hand off the floor. So you could take your left hand behind your back and then work those same directions with your right arm being in contact with the floor. I'm just going to tie into the shoulder stability and your core as well, because it's hopefully we're keeping our shoulder girdle level. And then go ahead and take your left hand to the floor and take your right arm away. And again, you're going to be challenging your shoulder stability here to support the shoulder girdle here in the torso as we go from side to side. And then coming back to both hands again, and then seeing if we can load. And it might feel a little bit easier to do it this time, left to right. And then just to tie into our whole spine here, we're going to take it through a little bit of cat and cow. So go ahead and tuck the spine, rolling the spine 1 vertebrae at a time, head drops last, taking the tailbone towards the sky, rolling up into that extension, a couple of times through your cat and cow. And then just to finish off with a little more full body movement from our table position here, if you feel comfortable going into downward dog. Oops, my sock went flying. go ahead and make your way from your table position into down dog. So you can also be doing down dog on your chair, or even using the wall if the chair variation doesn't work for you. Finding that down dog where we are loading through the shoulder girdle, hopefully nice and evenly left to right. And then bring the knees towards the floor. Going, and if you're doing on the chair, you're just coming back to your table position. Go through your cat. Take it through cow. Find your neutral position in your spine. Lift your knees, draw your hips back and up. And you can take that flow through a couple of times. Knees come to the floor. Cat. Taking the spine into cow. Finding your neutral. Loading through the arms as you lift the knees, draw your hips back, and then up into your into downward dog. And then this last time, bringing the knees to the floor and finding your child's pose, drawing your hips back towards your heels, reaching the arms forward if that feels comfortable. And if you're using your chair for your child's pose, you're sitting on your chair with your knees widened and you folded forward. You might stack the hands under the forehead. And again, just taking a few breaths here in child's pose. And then from that child's pose, we'll make our way back up through table and then onto your back. So we're going to set ourselves up for our last little body scan in Shavasana here. So if you like to grab your bolsters and blankets to set yourself up, feel free to. And once you've made your way into your comfortable position on your back, whether your legs are on bolsters or chairs or straight out or in a bent position, once you come down and you're settled in, I'm just going to bring awareness back to that Soma scan one more time. So again, think back to the positions and sensations that you felt at the very start of the class, noticing the contact points of the head, the curve in the neck, the contact of the shoulders into the floor, where you feel the thoracic spine into the floor, the contact points of the arms, the connection of the lower back or the curve of the low back, and where your placement of your pelvis lands. The relationship of the legs to the floor, so again, their points of contact, their general rotation, and maybe even the depth into the floor. Just noticing what's shifted perhaps for your being and your structure as a result of flowing through and unwinding tension through the shoulder girdle, the arms, and the hands, and then loading them again. And then bringing your awareness to your breath. Again, just noticing the space that's available for your breath. Is there a difference in the area that your breath can easily expand into as a result of your practice today? And then bringing your awareness to your throat. So our throat chakra is the chakra that governs over the shoulders, the arms, the hands, and the structures obviously in the neck and in the throat. So the color associated with that throat chakra is blue. So maybe focusing on the color blue right in the throat. Feel the breath in the throat. Feel how the breath expands outwards from the throat, across the tops of the shoulders, into the top of the chest and the upper back. Expanding all the way down into the arms. And letting the weight of your shoulders and your arms surrender to the floor. All the way down to the forearms and the wrists. All the way into the palms of the hands, or sometimes you can feel the sensation of a little tingle or an energy sensation in the palms. Extending all the way out each of your fingers and each of your thumbs. Into the center of the body, into the throat, and expanding the breath from the throat, and that color blue up and down, so to the crown of the head and towards the tailbone. Connecting the energy of the throat chakra to all of our chakras from the crown to the base. Sense of the breath from the throat all the way down through the pelvis, all the way down to the soles of the feet. Several more breaths here in this relaxation. Gently bringing awareness to the palms of your hands once again. Feel the thumbs, feel the fingers. Feel the weight of your hands into the floor. And then gently start to just move your fingers and your thumbs. Connecting into the wrists, rolling the palms back and forth, connecting to the elbows, bringing the palms away from the floor and then into the shoulders, reaching the arms up towards the sky. Bring them across your body, wrapping your arms around your torso or your upper torso here. And take a few breaths into your upper back. Reaching the arms up towards the sky again, taking your hands and clasping them together, and then palms facing the sky, reaching the arms up and over the head, lengthening out. Think about reaching the arms away from the body, stretch the feet away, maybe one at a time, alternating from side to side again, coming into the side body. And then releasing your arms and then rolling over onto your side. Just taking a quick little pause on the side. And then making your way up to find a seat. And from that seat, once we've made our way up, take the arms up to the sky. And exhale, bringing the hands down to your heart, letting your thumbs rest on that heart chakra. Thank you for your practice today. Namaste. Have a wonderful rest of your day.